You're listening to Journey for Truth with internationally known medium, Tai Yi practitioner, and radio host Tammy Urbanic.
Hello and welcome to Journey for Truth on iHeartRadio and YouTube. I'm Tammy Urbanic. Thank you so much for joining me. Journey for Truth is always on demand and with many new episodes. My website is empowermentthroughhealing.org. Feel free to sign up for my free newsletter. Also in May 2016, just a couple of months from now, in Denver, Colorado, there's going to be a seminar, Are You Who You Think You Are? Go to jonalifeinstitute.com to read more about that seminar, exactly when it's taking place, where it's taking place, how much to sign up, and also you can sign up on that website. My guest this week is Alexis Nicole White. Alexis had to redefine what love meant and what it was to have it in her life. And today she's going to share with us her story and about her book, The Covered. Alexis, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me.
It's great to have you on the show. Let's begin with your story. You grew up being raised by your grandparents. Why was that?
My mother was a teenage parent. She was actually in her third year of her continuing her education at Purdue University. And so it was very important to her to continue school. And my grandparents, they wanted to enable her to do so. So they took me in for the first 5 years and took care of me while she completed school and got on her feet and became stable. So it was very beneficial to her as well as me for them to step up to the plate and to contribute their parental instincts for me.
And where was your dad?
He was working in Indianapolis, 2 hours away. So he had just finished school as well and was getting on his feet. And my mom was finishing up school, so I just stayed with my maternal grandparents.
And was your father a part of your life on a regular basis, or was he kind of absent?
No, he was very much so present. Given the fact that I was raised in a interesting situation where I had two people that were a little bit advanced for their time, they really implemented co-parenting successfully. So my father was very much so present in my life, and so was my mother, although there was a little bit of distance in terms of like a commute, 2-hour commute between us. Mm-hmm. So, everyone was very supportive of everyone. They had my best interest in mind. So they wanted to make sure that when they were raising me, that they wanted me to know each other, and they wanted to ensure that I had all of the things that I needed to grow up and be successful.
So how did growing up in this particular situation, which is not completely uncommon, it's wonderful to have family around you who loves you, who wants to support you, how did that or did it impact your view of love?
It definitely hindered my view of love because I never really seen my mother like in a successful relationship, because the majority of my life I just watched her maturing as a woman because I was born when she was 19. So at 20 she's still trying to figure it out, and of course the first 5 years I was with my grandparents. So from 25 to 14, well from when she was 25 to I turned 14, I watched my mother figure out her life and go through the growing pains of a young woman. And not to say that she wasn't in any healthy relationship. It wasn't in terms of a marriage situation to where I could actively see what a father is supposed to be and what a mother is supposed to be. However, my parents did work out as a couple, and so my father was married, and so I got a chance to see that through what it was like for her to be able to do
that. How did you define success right out of college?
You know what? I thought that everything was going to be beautiful. I thought that I was going to get a brand new job. I just knew that I was going to be able to have a new condo, a new car, just buy a new wardrobe, buy a nice fancy bag. And unfortunately, it was just not like that for me. It was in the middle of a recession. I couldn't get a job. Trying to go through the woes of trying to figure out what my life would be like as a college student or a recent college graduate, and trying to make the transition into this world, it was pretty interesting. And unfortunately for me, I had a lot of growing pains of myself that I had to endure to try to realize for myself what success means for me.
Exactly. I found myself in the same situation where I needed to figure out what success meant versus what it means to other people. And am I absorbing other people's beliefs, perceptions, and letting it prevent me from really developing my own authentic perceptions and accurate individual perceptions. And I think a lot of people do have in their minds success is having that car, having that job, having the money, very much so. And for me, success is more about how comfortable am I with myself? Am I able to express myself? Am I able to form a healthy relationship. So is that kind of the perception you were leading towards in terms of success?
Absolutely. I thought I was going to get married. I thought that I would have like a stable career, and I would do everything that my parents taught me, because they were in the generation that if you went to college, you're going to graduate with a good job as long as you do well at school, and you're going to have longevity in that career, you're going to be able to buy and have nice credit and do all these things. And it was just the opposite for me. So I had to try to figure out that, number one, the job situation was not like I expected for it to be. Unfortunately, I had to take out student loans, which is something that most people my age have now.
Yeah.
And it's a culture shock, because I expected what my parents told me I would have, and things were very drastically different than what they told me that I would have.
Exactly. What led you to understand that you needed to begin changing some, let's say, faulty or incorrect perceptions?
And you know what? It's always a work in progress for me, because a lot of times you don't realize that you have a false interpretation or a false expectation of something until you're forced to have to confront it. So I would say just about every day, or if not every day, once a week, I'm challenging notions that I have about things in my life, and I have to try to make sure that I am moving towards the greater good, and not just what someone else expects of me, but to basically make sure that I understand why I want the things that I want, and why am I working for them. And it's okay to different from what the mass public, wants you to do.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And I think one of the perceptions I needed to really challenge was what quality of life really meant. Again, we have this idea that a quality life, again, means money and material things. And while that's wonderful and it does make life physically comfortable, there's so much more about the quality of life than just having a fat bank account and a nice home. So needing to challenge that perception, and then again going into that introspection and questioning yourself, what do I want my quality of life to look like, and how do I need to make those changes, and what false perceptions are blocking me from making those changes?
Absolutely.
So how did you begin that process? I know you said that it's ongoing, which for me as well, and I think just for everyone, it is an ongoing process. But what did your process look like when you said, okay, I have these perceptions, they're not correct, I need to change them?
First, I always wonder, why am I thinking the way that I am, and what is prompting me to feel that way? Because there's something that is triggering those emotions or those thoughts. And once I can figure out where that's coming from, I really look at what the deeper issue is for me and why it is that I feel the way that I do, because something made me feel this way. I didn't just wake up and decide, I want to quit my job and own my own business. Something prompted me to feel that way. What was it? Was it, I had a problem with authority, whatever, issues that it was going on. Did I not like the business process or the business model? Like, what affected me to make me feel that way? And once I can dissect that, I can dissect a whole lot of other things about me that I maybe didn't understand, or I could use it as a point of reference to grow from.
How did you dissect it?
A whole lot of questions, honestly, and in journaling, it allows me to express my feelings. Ask questions, talk to myself, pray, meditate, think about it. Really just think about it, and not just from an emotional standpoint, but from a pro and con standpoint as well.
Those are really great ideas. I always recommend that people journal. It's just a fantastic way to keep track of patterns, keep track of thoughts. I have been keeping a journal for years, less than 10 years, but for several years. And it's just interesting to go back and look at what I wrote 5 years ago, 6 years ago, especially during the different seasonal changes. Was I feeling very similar way every year between winter and spring, or spring and summer?
And you do notice those trends. Like, I looked at my journals from 2006 the other day, and I said, this is crazy. The same 22-year-old me is speaking the same way that I would speak at 32, which is interesting because I had the same thought process. But it's like, how do I still have the same thought process and I still make errors? So that gives me room to try to decide what was it that I was doing differently, or what would I do differently at 32 than what I would do at 22.
One thing that I noticed years ago that thankfully I think I'm over, we'll see if I can review my journals again, but I reviewed a journal and I thought, oh my goodness, I'm whining about this. Get over it, Tammy. And sometimes we just don't notice how we're reacting or responding to something that is not effective, But then when we have that journal, we can go back and begin making those changes, because we can say, geez, I've been doing this for the last 2 years. Maybe it's time to stop, or whatever, the last 10 years. Also, you were saying meditation, a lot of self-questioning, also excellent ways to really dissect a particular issue when you're wanting to change it, which takes work, but it also can be a form of self-discovery.
Exactly. And we're all work in progress, so don't beat yourself up when you realize that this is the area that you need to work on, because we all have something to work on. And the positive is that you've identified it so that you can positively move forward in the correct direction and correct the behavior pattern that you're noticing about yourself.
Absolutely. That's wonderful. Now, you help people better understand their relationships. What can people do to create change if they determine they are carrying emotional baggage?
Definitely try to make sure that you give yourself the time that you need to heal. A lot of times we're not healing because we want companionship so bad, and we're lacking the desired results of what we expect for our lives. And a lot of times we really do need to take the time to heal. Take space. Make sure that you love yourself first, and really look at the situation and self-accountability and responsibility for the situations that you have been in the past. Because a lot of times it's not other people. It's really maybe something that you may have done or contribute to the outcome that has been negative for you.
I love that. I love that you said we really need to love ourselves first and then go from there. And I think a lot of people really struggle with that. I think that in many families and cultures and communities, people are taught you need to love these other things first. Whether it's God, whether it's their child, whether it's these other things, you need to always love those things first. But it makes more sense. You love yourself first, you fill yourself up, and then you have that to offer to a God, to your child, to your partner, right, your friends, your family. It's very, very important. What are some red flags that women need to pay attention to in their relationships or the beginning of a relationship?
First and foremost, make sure that you are trusting your inner voice, because you feel that way for a reason. You've noticed something for a reason. Every last one of us can say, I had this feeling, or I thought this was suspicious, or I thought this was unusual, or this was peculiar. Mm-hmm. We're not having those feelings for a reason. So first and foremost, trust your inner voice. Don't be afraid to set boundaries. Don't be afraid to say, these are my rules to play by. I respect yours, respect mine. Because if a person does not respect your boundaries, then that's going to be the demise of the relationship altogether. Make sure that you come with your own things in hand so that you have something of optimistic things to offer someone. You know, you don't want to just come along and just look for someone else to give you the happy ending that you're looking for, because you have to sow into that relationship and cultivate it as well for yourself. So I definitely encourage a woman to come, or a man, to come with those three things in hand before they decide to move forward in a relationship.
I absolutely agree. Boundaries, respect, huge in my opinion in terms of being in a relationship, any type of relationship, but if it's especially a romantic one where you're with them every day in an intimate manner, there needs to be that level of respect. You know, when there's an argument, how are you going to argue? Is there this unwritten rule that you don't call each other names? You don't start screaming at each other frantically, that there's this, sure, voices might get raised, but ultimately it's about bringing it back to the table, having a discussion and working through that argument. I think that a lot of people, unfortunately, do not insist on having respect. Mm-hmm. Have you seen that with people that you've worked with?
Absolutely. That's a trend within our culture, that people just are so self-soothing and so selfish that we don't respect other people, and it's very unfortunate. Because at the end of the day, we're not giving our best to others because we're taking, but we're not giving. So that's a huge problem in relationships today.
Mm-hmm. And do you see many women not insisting on that respect? And why would that occur, do you think?
I definitely believe that women are starting to compromise because we're tired of being alone. And once you get to a certain threshold in life, what I'm noticing is about 35, it's like you're okay till you hit 35, and then 35 comes around, you're like, oh my God, I'm still single, let me find a man now. And then you're more likely to settle for someone that you probably wouldn't have settled for before. And it becomes problematic in the long run because the shelf life of that relationship is not going to be that long if you're not thoroughly impressed or
seen that a lot too. Getting to that point where they're in their 30s, maybe even late 30s, and they're thinking about possibly having children. And what I've also seen a trend in some women, not all, of course, but some women, they are willing to have a child with someone they don't love for the sake of having a child. And it can easily become a train wreck, especially if that woman is not prepared for the amount of responsibility. And typically it's a first child if it does occur. And then again, like you were stating, just compromising or going ahead with a relationship that otherwise you would not, simply because you're a certain age.
Right.
It's asking for trouble, I think.
Yes.
What are some misconceptions about dating?
We think that once you date a guy frequently, or you may even be involved in him romantically on a consistent basis, that automatically qualifies you to be in a relationship. And a lot of times that's not the case. He's just dating other people as well as you. So we have to be a little bit more guarded with the way that we open ourselves up and present ourselves to people, especially if we haven't made the formalized, discussion that we're going to be in a relationship. We're going to be intimate on one level and exclusive. And a lot of times that is so not the case. And so we go into it being disappointed because we didn't meet our expectations, because we had false hopes for the outcome when we never really said, this is where I would like to be in my relationship with you by this point in time, or at this point in time I feel like we need to be more exclusive because of X, Y, and Z.
Mm-hmm. So just really being honest and having clarity right from the get-go. Mm-hmm. And if that person, if that person you're dating is not wanting to have that clarity, then maybe it's time to move on.
Exactly. And don't be afraid to walk away.
Wonderful. Mm-hmm. Now, by creating change, if you were to compare where you are now to where you were in right outside of college, how would you compare that?
That is a really good question. I would think now I am more prepared to deal with life than what I was before. I think that I am more capable of looking at the quality of a person's character as opposed to the intangible things that don't mean anything. And when I say that, I mean, like, does this person work at Eli Lilly, or does this person work for Bank of America, or do they work for UPS? The different silly things that we look for in mates. So for me, as a more mature woman, I would definitely be more concerned with the quality of a person's character to determine whether or not they're worthy of my time, worthy of my relationship, worthy of whatever it is that I can offer them, as opposed to looking at checklists and thinking that I'm really going to find this man that has all of these 19 qualities that I'm looking for with only these 3 negative things. It just doesn't work like that. It's unrealistic.
And having that self-respect, knowing that you're worth a quality relationship, you're worth a relationship with a person who also has self-respect. And I think many women in particular really struggle with that sense of self-worth, that perception. A lot of women admit to that, some don't, but they still carry it. So it is practicing that self-worth. I deserve to have a relationship that is of equality and very respectful.
Absolutely, I agree.
Now, you already answered this my next question a little bit for me, but if you were to offer one piece of advice to your younger self, what would that be?
Don't do it, girl. Because a lot of things that I've done in my life were very impulsive and very irrational, but that was a 22-year-old girl. And if anyone looks at their 22-year-old self, they would say, you were a little bit out there, or a 23-year-old self.
Me.
We've all been there. So I wouldn't criticize myself, but I would just say, don't do it. Think about it twice, long and hard, before you make impulsive decisions.
Now, where can people find your information and your book, The Covered?
You can find me on the web at AlexisNicoleWhite.com. I am also on Facebook at Alexis Nicole White, Instagram, Twitter, and Periscope at I Am Miss Alexis. My book, The Covered, is available in 40,000 retail stores in 16 countries, Barnes & Noble, Books A Million, Amazon, Christian bookstores, you name it, I'm probably there.
So on every corner.
Yes.
Thank you, Alexis, for being a guest on my show today.
Thank you so much for your patience. I really do appreciate it, and I thank you for allowing me to tap into your audience.
And thank you, listeners, for joining me here as well on Journey for Truth on iHeartRadio and YouTube. Until next time, have a fantastic week.